there's an interesting thing that happened. I pointed it out to some people on Facebook. And that to me is significant. These flowers are 3 weeks old. They look
Wow.
like they're almost brand new. Yeah, it indicates to me that the atomic vibration of the house, this home, is changing. I was told many years ago when I bought this house that it would be an anchorage for a Nirmanakaya. A Nirmanakaya is a seventh degree initiate being. It's like a Buddha or Christ being. I'm just saying that because this could be proof of the fact that the atomic, as I said earlier, vibration of the atoms of the house are changing. And have a seat there. Where's Bob's? Anybody know where Bob is?
Bob is practicing in the back.
He's practicing. Okay, yeah, he'll entertain us later after tonight. So today is February 3rd, 2023. We're continuing with our lecture from when we last met. Was it 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? And we're talking about the rays. And we always say when teaching the rays that it is an integral part of a new psychology, and that when psychology becomes an exact science, which it is not an exact science, but it will be in the future, and certainly in the Aquarian age, the premise and basis of the new psychology will be the rays, these 7 rays that explain these multiple personality types. I have these printed out. I think there's some in the classroom. They're 8x10s. Probably most of you have gotten these at some time or other. If you don't have them, come and see me after the lecture and I'll get you copies of them, or I'll have them made if I don't have any available now. I will get copies for you. It's a wonderful instrument to do ray analysis. And the ray analysis, what we try to do is we try to establish the ray of the soul, the ray of the astral or emotional body, the ray of the mental body, the ray of the personality, and the physical body ray type. I don't know if we've got pictures of the physical bodies. We don't. We did talk about these last week and in detail. Is that straight or is it crooked? I guess it's straight enough. So the world we're living in is changing for a multitude of reasons. Number one, we're at the end of a century, in the beginning of the 21st century. We're at the end of a bimillennium. We're entering in the 3rd millennium. We're at the end and the death of the Piscean age, and we're giving birth to the age of Aquarius. And it's important that we understand these things. It's important also that we understand things like esoteric psychology and the significance of the rays and how we're all being affected by them. We say that the rays are the builders of form. The 7 rays in the Bible were called the 7, what were they before the throne? 7 spirits before the throne. These names are throughout history and throughout religions. I've got a list of them in the East Room. Maybe somebody could, can you go get those? It's got the rays at the top. It's got a star in the center of the chart. And it's to the left side toward the front of the classroom. And it's got dodecanates, 12s, and would probably be a good visual tool for everybody to see tonight. So while she's getting that, what we talked about last week was we talked about the 7th ray. And we talked about what constituted a seventh ray soul. Rays 3, 4, 3, 4, and 7 are coming in very powerfully. It's my belief that this green comet that can be seen out in the northern sky tonight, and has been visible for some time, I believe is bringing in more third ray energy. I can feel it, I can sense it. I told a story last time, thanks, Hui. To get that chart. There's we'll show you how you do a ray analysis too. I think we had some ray analysis. They're not on this chart, but they're on another chart where we did the ray analysis of Adolf Hitler, Leonardo da Vinci, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, one of the founders of the Theosophical Society. And we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. I had spoken to one of our guests here tonight earlier about ray analysis and what an important thing it is. And in the future, when children are brought up, they go to kindergarten, first grade, second grade, the guidance counselors and the psychologists who are working in the schools will be trained in ray psychology, and they'll be able to take the child at a very young age and their horoscope, taking the child's horoscope, along with ray analysis, and they'll be able to direct the child. So they will know early on what that child is suited for and what their soul's purpose is. And from the very beginning, the guidance counselor will know. And they'll be able to direct the child to their soul's purpose. It sounds fantastic, but it's all part of the coming new age, and it will happen. We already did it in England at Claregate. Claregate is an old English word that means gateway to light. So when you hear me talk about Claregate, we're talking about a gateway to light. Baker always said that this home that we're in was Claregate West. That is, this home is a gateway to light. And it was part of his plan to use it as such, which is also my plan. So anyway, we did talk about the seventh ray soul. And the world is full. They're coming in huge numbers, young people who constitute a seventh ray soul, that they're intent on bringing order and ritual to the planet. They have a love of ceremony, or sound, and what does it say? They're magicians, magical, magnetism. They use magnetism and magic. We have elements of that in this house because I have a seventh ray personality. And so when it's most obvious is at Christmas time, when I have every wall in the house decorated with lights and phantasmagoria. Some of it is still evident in the house. But anyway, I like that sort of stuff, and it creates a ambiance that is very much seventh ray. It's who I am. I'm in seventh ray colors tonight. We talked about what seventh ray clothing would be. I wrote a little dissertation on Facebook. Some lady, I think she was a Japanese lady who was designing clothes, and the seventh ray clothing is long flowing kind of clothing. It doesn't look like it was sprayed on the body. It's very loose fitting, and some of it is even the unisex, what we would call unisex clothing. It'll be more evident in the future as we 500 years from now, 300 years from now, move into the Aquarian age further and further, and are very much under the influence of seventh ray energies. We were talking about the seventh ray physical body last week, and we didn't really, I don't believe we really got into details of it. But one of the characteristics, and there can be admixtures, of the ray body types, very definitely. Usually mergers of second ray and seventh ray, but there can be others as well. We don't really yet know. We talked about the fourth ray physical body. We don't know what that is. We're looking for fourth ray physical bodies. We know they're coming in, and we're trying to determine what constitutes a fourth ray physical body. I have some ideas, and I've distinguished two possibilities. I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but in the future I will, of what constitutes a fourth ray physical body. But we know that in a seventh ray physical body, it's a person of light skin, usually Caucasians type, who tan easily in the sun. I had a girlfriend years ago, and her mother said about her daughter that she could get tan in a warm breeze. Her body tanned that easily, and I've known people like that who can really tan. That's characteristic of a seventh ray physical body, and they'll become more and more prominent because what's happening is if you could see etherically beyond the physical body, you would see the chakra system, and you would see the nadis and the filaments that connect the nadis to one another and connect the nadis through the filaments to the chakras. And one of the things that happens in the seventh ray physical body is that the filaments, the etheric filaments, are engorged, and they can carry more of the sun's prana to the chakras. And one of the things that all mystics are concerned about is prana storage of prana. The prana can be used multifariously. People sometimes who are able to materialize objects will have an engorged filaments in their body, and they can also produce ectoplasm, which is the material out of which the phenomena of materialization occurs. I'm always on the lookout for anybody who can produce copious amounts of ectoplasm. So if you know of anybody, tell them to call me. You want to talk to them. So, what's interesting, there seem to be less and less of them all the time. Yeah. So, but ectoplasm is an amazing thing. I don't want to deviate too much, but there's a lot of interesting stories out there. I had a series of books that were published by Life magazine. And one of the things that I'm interested in and also would like to investigate is the incredible phenomena known as spontaneous human combustion.
Oh.
And there was in this series of books by Life magazine, Life Publishing, probably those books are 40 years old now, but they're really an amazing set of books. I think they're in a basement somewhere in a box. But there was a man whose body began to smoke, and the smoke was running out of his pant legs and out of his sleeves of his shirts and around his neck. And they thought he was on fire, and they couldn't explain it. Couldn't explain what it was, but of course what it was ectoplasm. He was producing ectoplasm. Very rare for a man to produce ectoplasm.
It is? It's more of a female
It's
thing?
more of a female thing, yeah. Yeah, they used to say, what did they used to say?
I don't even know what it is.
Ectoplasm. It's an amorphous substance, And we know what it's produced, what the chemicals that are in it have been examined by scientists.
Wow.
It's amino acid
Amino acid and,
and
yeah, what's the other?
albumin.
Albumin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, amino acid and albumin. That's right. Thank you, Tracy.
So it's the white egg yolk.
Yes.
Something
there you
like
go.
that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And people produce this. The thing was, it used to be fairly common. And now that the population has quadrupled in 100 years, you almost never see it. And it has something to do with the increase of the population that's causing the minimalization of ectoplasmic phenomena. Anyway, it has to do too with, as we said, the nadis. And the seventh ray body is a body that certainly will tan easily. They're emerging in the southern regions, sunlit southern regions of the Anglo-Saxon subrace. And before we started our meeting tonight, we talked about, there was a group of us here, and I was telling stories about South Africa. I had lived down there for a short time and visited a group of mystics, just the most incredible people. And he had the gentleman that was in charge of the group there was called the Sun Center, SUN, Spiritual Unity of Nations, he called it, the Sun Center. And it was in South Africa. He had a box of gemstones that had been materialized. It was a wooden box. It was about this square, about this high. He said they were materialized, some of them by Saint Germain, and some of them were materialized by a very controversial person who was very seventh ray. He not only had a seventh ray physical body, and seventh ray personality. They said he had a seventh ray soul. His name was Keith Reinhardt. And if you look really, really hard, you may be able to find some material on Keith Reinhardt, but he was a materialization expert. He was constantly under attack. And of course, it was always the usual suspects attacking him. I won't mention names because I get in trouble every time I do. But groups, supposedly esoteric groups,
Yeah, the dark ones.
attacked him ferociously. And I asked Busby about it. Dr. Busby was the Englishman that I talked to some of the people about earlier tonight. And my connection with Busby and Baker and how they were connected, and how Busby's wife was Dr. Baker's amanuensis. But Keith Reinhardt, there's a lady that lives in Macomb Township. She's a Facebook friend of mine. have her come over. I'll let her tell her story to you about the materialization of this gemstone that Keith Reinhardt had materialized, and she wears it. She wears it. And I don't know if it's in a ring now or if it's in a necklace. Her name is Sandra Quinn. I'll bring her in sometime and let you tell. She was one of Elvis's girlfriends at one time back in the late 50s, early 60s. She lives over in Macomb Township. I've known her for quite a few years. And she has this stone that is highly prized. So the deal was that he was constantly being debunked. And there were conflicting stories about his materialization expertise. The Busbys always said, you couldn't hide that many stones on you. See?
He did that many.
Yeah, he'd do a wash tub full of gemstones in the night.
Yeah.
And so other people said, well, he was swallowing them before he went on stage, and then he would spit them up. And and you couldn't do it. You couldn't
No.
swallow 100 pounds of gemstones.
Wow.
But they were magnificent stones. And I know that the ladies that were in the group, there was a group of elderly women there. It's outside of Cape Town and Somerset West, to be exact. And they took the gemstones to a gemologist in Cape Town. And the guy said he had never seen anything like it in his life and couldn't put the value on it.
Wow.
He said it was just incredible. And then I held it in my hands. I mean, I saw it. But there was an expression of a person, whether it was Keith Reinhardt, who was very seventh ray, or whether it was Saint Germain himself, who was also very seventh ray. But Busby had the stones. And a lot of other very interesting things, some that had materialized. I'm telling you this just because they're interesting stories and they can pique your interest into things. And one of the things that he had was a book that was written on palm leaves. I've told this story before, but it's such a great story and it's absolutely true. You see pictures on the internet of these palm leaf books, and they're usually, the pages are about this long and they're about that high, and then they're just the thickness of a palm leaf. But they're always written in ink or some colored pigment, either black, usually black, but sometimes white. But these palm leaves were the most ancient that anybody, that the experts at Oxford University in England had ever seen. And these pages of the palm leaf books, there was no ink. There was no pigment. It's what a printer, if you know anything about artistic prints by Rembrandt or any of the great Renaissance artists, it was what we call intaglio.
Embossed.
It was an impression into the surface of the palm leaf. And you could, in a room about like, this is what, he had a large walk-in closet, about half the size of this room here. And you could read it perfectly because the highlights of whatever light was available shone off the embossed images that were on the palm leaves. And so Busby took this book to the experts at Oxford University, and they said that it was older than 10,000 years old, but they couldn't put an age on it. It was older than Sanskrit and Senzar, which are the oldest known languages. It was incredible stuff. It really did look like something that was from outer space. He said that the book had been given by a high initiate being to the Dalai Lama, and it was actually the Dalai Lama who gave this book to Joseph Busby, who was my friend, and who I lived with for a short time in South Africa.
Wow.
It was an interesting period in my life because there were a lot of things that were happening spiritually to me. Anyway, they involved what?
Sorry, I just wanted to know if anyone was able to translate it.
No.
Okay.
No. Sometime I'll draw you some images of some of the.
That would be great.
It's just incredible because you've just never seen anything like it. I mean, I've been looking pretty hot and heavy for the last 20 years and didn't even anything remotely close to it. That it's not images. It's actually like an alphabetic writing that is indecipherable. Anyway, so this had a lot to do with the seventh ray, the gemstones, and the encounters. Busby was telling me these stories about his encounters with Saint Germain, who is, like I said, very seventh ray, and this Keith Reinhardt guy who was constantly under attack, but a very interesting and bizarre character. And they used to travel in a network around America back in the late 50s and early 60s. That was the time I met Hamid Bey, who was the head of the Coptic Fellowship International. Some of us earlier this evening, before most of you got here, were talking about Hamid Bey and how John Davis up in Wyoming, Michigan, had founded or carried on some of the work that Hamid Bey did. He was an Egyptian mystic, came to America around the time of Yogananda. And I met him when I was real young, 18, 19 years old. I used to go to the Theosophical Society, and they would bring in a lot of interesting lectures there. But one of the things that was so interesting about Busby and his wife was that they were both second-ray souls. And when you were around them, the second-ray energy, as I was telling people earlier this evening, 5:30, the energy was so powerful that when Busby would speak in these large groups, there might be 200-300 people in a room. And people would just sob uncontrollably, because I asked him, I said, why is that? Why are the people, they're tearing up and sobbing? And he said, that because the words are supercharged cosmic energy. And of course, it was second ray energy. He was an unusual person. It was an experiment. It was being used by the spiritual hierarchy, where they used his throat chakra. And there were 5 masters who would take turns speaking through him. The English master, Saint Germain, I forget, there was a couple of others. But anyway, the inflection in his voice would change. And his wife, Louise, could identify each one of these masters that were speaking through him. The reason I'm telling you this is because in the future, and I have had experiences with it in my own life, where you'll be overshadowed. Overshadowing will be a thing of the future, where the masters will use you to get a message out. They'll use your throat chakra. The whole purpose behind the 5th root race is to open the throat chakra. And teaching these things, like the rays and how they manifest themselves in the world, is a part of that. It's a part of a process of expanding consciousness of mankind and creating a whole new field of understanding that will be the foundation, really, of the coming new age. And so we talked, like I said, about the 7th ray extensively, but we kind of have to backtrack just a little bit. So I'll read this off of the chart, and they won't be able to see it on Zoom, and probably most of you can't see it here. When I was a little boy, one of the things kids would ask one another, what's your favorite number? And invariably, everybody's favorite number was 7. 7, but they didn't know why, but they liked that number 7. And of course, we live in a septenary solar system. We live in a solar system that is composed of septenates, of things that are composed out of 7 energies or 7 qualities, which we call the 7 rays. So the proposition is that all things result from a single emission, whether you're talking about Big Bang or the sun itself being the central focal point of our solar system. It is from the one emission. And these emissions are constantly affected by the radiations of a central source that is not only maintained by all of the great religions as God, the divine, or the one, but is reflected in scientific and psychological thinking. The Big Bang theory of the origin of the universe is merely a rephrasing of the more ancient proposition that Carl G. Jung believed every thought, word, or deed is affected by energies entering the psyche from the hidden radiatory center within, from the unconscious. The religions also describe the deity as a trinity. You cannot understand the one solely by itself, but you can understand it through a trinity of what the Christians call Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, which we say is things like what Plato said, truth, beauty, and goodness. And so through the three, then we can understand the seven. And we say that these are the seven rays. They are the builders of form. All things in nature, from minerals, seventh ray amethyst stone, carries seventh ray energy. Emeralds, third ray, green, third ray energy. That's what I believe the comet is doing. The green comet is actually bringing in third ray energy, an abundance of third ray energy. It comes around once every 50,000 years, which would be about right when you think about it.
Wow.
So anyway, the religions also describe the deity as a trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, etc. The three aspects of the divine. Plato proposed that the divine cannot be perceived directly, but manifests in man in the qualities of truth, beauty, and goodness. And so the one may be known through the three. The next expression of the divine emission is sevenfold, and that the three become seven. It was the secret doctrine. It was in the secret doctrine that the idea was put forward that all things and beings in the world in all forms of mind and matter arose from combinations of seven fundamental energies. There are seven great beings, the lords of the seven rays, the archetypal intelligences that transform the divine qualities into seven, much as a prism refracts light, while light into the seven colors of the spectrum. It's universally true, you can't deny it. The Bible refers to the seven spirits before the throne of God. The Judaic religion embraces the proposition of the seven Sephiroth of the Kabbalah, and the Buddhists have their seven divine races. The esotericists say that they refer to them as the seven rays. The next level of divine expression is the zodiac of 12 signs. The seven becomes 12. The 12 signs absorb the design attributes of the seven rays and express them within their own peculiar qualities. Then there are the seven planets, which rule the signs of the zodiac, and finally the 12 houses of the horoscope represent the externa of man. The expression of the forces that we have been considering here at the most mundane level, as the earth spins and the planets interact with the signs in a great celestial dance through the houses, we are continually presented with permutations of divine qualities, the music of the spheres, and all the time these forces are affecting our spiritual, mental, and emotional and physical forms. The manifest world is a perception of astrological energies expressing divine ideas. Certainly that is absolutely true. I'll take a few questions just right now if there's anybody that wants to ask. We've covered a lot of information in an appallingly brief period of time. Yeah.
What's happening in our news and the events of current events
Mhm.
in regard to the rays?
Yeah, it's a great question. Fourth ray, harmony through conflict. Everything is in turmoil. I said in the very beginning, the Piscean age is dying. The age of Aquarius is being born. Death and birth are happening simultaneously. Eventually, the fourth ray will prevail and harmony will ensue. When I was a little boy, if you told somebody that in 60 years into the future, that the Germans and the Japanese would be our greatest allies, they would have either stoned you or laughed at you or had you committed.
Yeah.
But here we are. World War II is over. my ex-father-in-law, to the day he died, he hated the Japanese. He died about 14 years ago. And in his mind, he was still fighting World War II. Some still are fighting World War II in the astral plane.
For sure.
And that's pretty common. But out of the conflict, harmony is coming. So all we're seeing now is conflict. We're seeing tremendous upheaval. One of the things I tell people, it's interesting for you and for the people in the Zoom meeting to think about tonight. There's a lot of fear, a lot of paranoia concerning China. I'm trying to think is the best way to explain this, but I don't worry about it too much. And the reason that I don't worry about it too much is because the Chinese people are a product of the fourth root race. The spiritual hierarchy of the planet, their plan is universal brotherhood. It's not for the domination of an ancient root race older than the fifth root race, which is predominant in the world today. Some people will argue that. But the races succeed by natural progression over hundreds of thousands of years. When the atom bomb was developed, I told this story to some of you before, bear with me. The original plan for the use of the atom bomb was to use it on the Germans, and through hierarchical intervention, affecting the consciousness of world leaders, and people like Oppenheimer, and Harry Truman, who was the president at the time, various people in the scientific community and in the military, allied military community, were being influenced in the astral world to not use the bomb on the Germans, but to use the bomb on the Japanese. And the reason was because the Japanese were a product of the fourth root race, where the Germans were a product of the fifth root race. Hitler himself, in the lecture, I've given hints of it, and I don't think we've ever shown the lecture here at the house. I have a PowerPoint on Adolf Hitler and the esoteric significance of World War II. He was a subrace Manu. And Winston Churchill was a subrace Manu. Winston Churchill was the subrace Manu of the Anglo-Saxon subrace, and Adolf Hitler was the subrace Manu of the fourth subrace of the fifth root race, the Germanic tribes. And Hitler told you what he was going to do, told you what he was all about. It was all about race. Only nobody knew that he was talking about it in esoteric terms. Now, that's a heavy, heavy thought right there. But once you realize how the root races evolved, the Lemurians, and the Atlanteans, and the Aryans, and all of the sub-races, 7 sub-races for each root race, then you begin to put the picture together. And Hitler was just right out front about it. You know, he was very occult, very esoteric, and he had a library with 16,000 books. And he, in whatever free time he did have, he read and studied. Yeah, Tracy's got a question.
Are we seeing some of that now with the
Yeah.
racism thing
Yeah.
and the white supremacy and that type of thing? And,
Yeah, in my mind, it's more in the realm of black magic and black magic, the psychology of black magic. It's where you take the truth and you turn it into a lie, and you take a lie and you try to make people believe that it's the truth. That's the phase we're in right now. Hopefully it'll end fairly soon. Baker told me one night, very late, one night in London, where it was just he and I, in very intimate conversation about the root races and about the black magicians of Atlantis and what was happening in the world. And he said that the great evil in the world, mostly the drugs and the pedophilia, that sex trafficking brings in tremendous billions of dollars. And many of these politicians are connected to it. And it all has to be cleaned up before we can ever hope for the externalization of the events that have been promised for 2025.
It almost seems impossible to get that done in 2 years.
It
I'm not
does,
saying it is impossible. I'm saying
but if one or two things happened, it could trigger the whole thing.
yeah, and it's
See,
very possible.
And that's what I'm anticipating.
Yeah.
That there'll be a series of events.
Like
Yeah.
domino.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hopefully starting next week,
Yeah.
after
true.
the State of the Union,
Mhm.
we start all those investigations. And,
So it'll be something like that.
yeah.
And it'll lead to purity and clarification of what the facts and what the hell's really going on. And it's got to all be cleaned up because the hierarchy is meeting around the time of Wesak in 2025. So that's early May of 2025. So that's 2 years. You know, just a little over 2 years. Something has got to give. And I really think that the dam is soon to burst. But anyway, we're off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I did want to answer your question because it was an excellent question. I can deviate a little bit. It's almost 20 after. Is there anybody else that wants to ask a question? Because, yeah.
You mentioned the green comet.
yeah,
Was it?
Mhm.
Can you explain that a little bit more about the green comet and its influence on us?
yeah. Comets bring in energies while they pass through the solar system. That's one of the things esoterically that they do. I can remember back, I was a young kid in the 1960s. And I can remember having a college professor, I told a story about his horoscope earlier, some very intimate details in his horoscope. And he and I were talking about this. It was like the Beatles and the hippie movement, and marijuana and free sex and all that stuff. And he said, and I could feel it too, I was in complete agreement with him, that he could walk out on the porch of his house in the morning and you could feel that there was an energy. It was six-ray energy. It was probably the last great exhalation of six-ray energy because it's dying off. Six-ray energy is dying off. The energy of Christianity, of devotion and idealism, it's all dying off. And you could walk down the street and you could feel this, man, the heck is that? You know, you could feel something. And the people that you talk to, and I can remember the most extreme hippie type guys that I knew. And I went to an art institute where there was just, that's all there was fourth ray souls, fourth ray personalities, and kids smoking pot all day long. And the kid was telling me a story about his dad. It was the first time I'd ever heard the term instant karma. It's a real thing.
For sure.
And his dad liked to go bow hunting for deer and killing deer with his bow and arrow. And he developed this terrible affliction in his shoulder. And he couldn't couldn't hunt anymore, didn't have enough strength to draw back the bow. So he had to give up hunting. And the kid was saying, that was my dad's instant karma. He's talking about instant karma. Back in 1966, maybe 67. Instant karma. Nowadays, people generally are aware of things like instant karma. They talk about instant karma. And some guy on TV, I'd made a comment on Facebook to some guy that did some crime or something that all backfired on him. And I just wrote instant karma. And the response I got was stunning. You know, that everybody was in agreement with the idea of instant karma. And they're talking about karma.
So Dave, we're getting into the,
which is into the terminologies of our language of the 20 of the day. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, a comment about the instant karma is that we're finding the phenomena where we get a lot of misinformation or disinformation, and it's becoming rebutted almost immediately. So we're in kind of this quickening period where,
Yeah, it's a
we
good
don't have to
term.
wait for.
Quickening is a really good term. Yeah, I think somebody said about things happening in a 2-year period, and it can happen.
Yeah.
It can happen. If you really think about this, this was one of the things that I went through a spell on where I was really contemplating. The involvement of America in World War II began almost in 1942, began in December 7th, 1941 with Pearl Harbor. So December of 41 is almost January of 42.
Right.
So the war went from 42 to 43 to 44, and halfway through 45 in May, the war in Europe ended. A vast war. And when you think of all of the energy that was expended in that incredible event, and then 6 months later, the Japanese surrendered. Was it 6 months? Maybe it was June, July, August, September. So 4 months later, the Japanese surrendered, thanks to the atom bomb. But things can happen rapidly. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, they would always say in the English ashram, your whole life can change in a day, and indeed it can. You know, you can have a heart attack and die in a
There you
day.
go.
You can have all
Spontaneously combust.
you can win the lottery in one day, change you. You can do all kinds of things that can happen in one day that will change you for all time. And the world is right at that flipping point where yeah, something is soon to happen. I think what we better do is we better summon Bob Berger. We're going to keep the Zoom on, and Bob is going to come up, and we want to share Bob's musical talents with our Zoom audience tonight. There's been a lot of people on Zoom who have contacted me to and ask about Bob. Not so much about my lectures, but about Bob playing the cello tonight.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll just take a break, and we'll try to get Bob up here as soon as we can and let him entertain us.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
That is amazing about those flowers that they're 3 weeks old. That is amazing. That is totally amazing. That happened to me. Somebody gave me flowers and they lasted 3 weeks. I took pictures of them and
Yeah, I
sent
took
them to
pictures
you.
of these. They're just
It's amazing.
absolutely,
That is,
it's like they're frozen.
yeah.
You know.
There's a chair. Oh, okay.
Bob, do you want to sit here?
Okay. all right.
Yeah.
Why don't you sit here in the wingback chair?
No, that's not good.
I got a chair. I got.
Yeah, there's a chair.
All right, let's bring that up here.
But how about the one,
Bob-
good ones? Is this
Bob
good?
Bergman.
No, he likes this.
Those are good
I have
too.
one.
Okay, let's-
Tracy's got it.
I'm right behind you.
I was sitting on this,
Grace has got a chair.
let me just get something for the, to protect the carpet.
Okay, I'll get a belt. I've got
No, I
a,
have something I brought,
oh, you do?
yeah, it's in my coat pocket.
You want me to hold it on?
I'll just put it down.
Okay, can they see this pretty good?
Yes.
I can see the chair.
Kelly, come here.
He's coming up with a cello too.
I know.
Just the smell. It's the smell.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing. Now that's just a lot of property.
Yeah, trying to.
Good, good,
It's slow, but sure. Yeah. Are you sure? Are you okay? Are you sure you are okay?
Am I sure
Yeah. Is
that everything's okay?
yeah. Oh my.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
Yep. Holy Spirit's taking care of all the details of the day.
But I never.
So I don't have anything to worry about. I just get things done.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, right.
I like that.
Yeah. Most people do.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Randy taught me that.
Psychological.
Randy, the big gal over here.
Yeah.
He taught me to say that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I picked it up from him. Hey,
Okay.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, 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 I have it on there. Look at it. Great types of food. Certain foods fall in that range.
Oh, that'll drop.
Where'd you get that cello?
It's
Chicago?
Yes.
And I would put it on like, and then like lay it.
Intentionally done.
There.
Okay, Bob.
Wow.
Bob Bergman. From the Detroit Symphony Orchestra.
That was a excerpt from a Mahler symphony. It's a melody that's played in one of the sections of the piece.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
Wow.
Thank you.
That was really lovely. That's transformative.
That's the first page of the Schumann concerto. There's another page here.
Very good.
Yeah, they couldn't hear well. It's somehow,
Good.
yeah.
Is that microphone?
It is the microphone, but I think something to do with the music, the vibration, I think it's just not,
Probably the vibration.
yeah.
It
Doesn't
was too
trans,
much,
yeah,
very distorted.
Have to go to the concert live.
no, I think we just, I think we just need a maybe different, more better.
Do you have a CD for sale?
It's all been recorded by stuff. I'm peeking at it.
Okay, so are we saying goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, Bob will play another
She wants.
two tunes probably. for
So
us.
let me just move maybe a little bit further away.
Most favorite.
I'm gonna move a little bit further away, that will be better.
I'm just peeking at all. It's like a new world opening up.
Yeah.
It starts to
Try it
sound
out,
like something,
yeah.
getting some control on it, learn how to relax a little bit by bit.
I noticed the bow stuff,
Learning how to meld on stuff, yeah. So.
Better?
I don't know, I hope so.
Yeah.
Rapid relaxation.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
It throws your astral body.
Yeah, well, for me, what I have to do when I'm playing, when I'm practicing now, take a step back from all these difficult things, slow down, sit up, relax, and breathe while I'm working on these things. Slow and
Very nice.
you can hear more clearly.
Yeah.
It becomes easier to manipulate the man if you're trying to manipulate the body.
Most certainly.
Well, you are warming up.
It creates like functional
Getting better.
integration.
Play another 3 or 4.
That was
Well, Galen was talking about Beethoven. I'll play a little bit of the Beethoven symphony that he was.
Wow.
Wow.
This that comes out,
This
that
is,
you
this is,
remember.
this is audition stuff.
Oh, this is the practice.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Your audition is on this Monday.
It doesn't show any.
Okay, it's almost 8:45. What would you like to do? Do you want to play a little more? Do you want to
Hey,
call it an
David,
evening? Yeah.
maybe you can say everybody good night in here, so that way they will go.
What?
On the Zoom, you know,
Yeah.
we're still going, so because some people start leaving, so maybe you will say goodbye to everybody so we can shut down.
Say goodbye to everybody on Zoom.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, well, this is our friend Bob Bergman entertaining us here tonight from the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. Maybe the next time he comes, if he does, tell us. Maybe the next time his cello and how he came to find it. It's an amazing story. The cello is how old?
Over 300 years.
Oh.
Yeah, beautiful
She found
instrument.
you.
And, yeah, exactly. So we'll say goodnight to the Zoom audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
And we'll finish up here with our closing ceremonies. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for recognition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have another one you were gonna play right then, or?
Let him play.
No.
Let him play one more.
One more, okay.
Yeah.
As many as you want.
Yeah. Okay.